Ever wonder who actually owned the deer in medieval forests? Did kings really execute people just for killing rabbits? Could a peasant lose his hands for catching a single pheasant on noble land? Number 5. Blood, forests, and power, the deadly game of medieval hunting rights. Picture this: you're starving. Your family hasn't eaten meat in months. A plump deer wanders near your medieval village. You reach for your bow and potentially sign your own death warrant. In medieval Europe, hunting wasn't just about food or sport, it was about raw power. Kings and nobles jealously guarded their exclusive rights to hunt, creating a system so strict that it sparked rebellions, led to brutal punishments, and shaped the very landscape we see today. William the Conqueror, that battle-hardened Norman king who conquered England in 1066, didn't just take the crown, he took the deer, boars, and birds too. After establishing control, William created the infamous forest laws, designating huge swaths of England as royal forests where only he could hunt. These weren't just woodlands, they included villages, fields, and pastures. Villages that had hunted freely for generations suddenly found themselves under strict new rules. One contemporary chronicler described William's forest obsession. He loved the tall deer as if he were their father. But his love for animals translated to notorious cruelty toward humans. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle reported, he made large forests for deer and enacted laws so that whoever killed a hart or a hind should be blinded. Yes, you read that right, blinded, for killing a deer. The forest laws weren't just harsh, they were revolutionary. Before the Norman conquest, hunting in Anglo-Saxon England operated under different principles. While kings and nobles certainly had hunting privileges, common folk typically had access to smaller game and could hunt in areas not specifically claimed by elites. William's system changed everything. It created a legal framework where animals became property of the crown before they were even caught. Think about that, a wild animal running through the woods already belonged to someone. This concept would shape European law for centuries. As royal forests expanded under subsequent monarchs, sometimes covering up to 1/3 of England, the stage was set for centuries of conflict. These weren't simple disputes, these were clashes over food, dignity, and power that would sometimes erupt into bloodshed. Number 4. Poachers, peasants, and punishment, the human cost of hunting restrictions. What happened when a starving peasant caught a rabbit on forbidden land? The consequences could be shockingly severe. In 1215, King John had pushed his hunting obsession so far that the restriction of forest laws made it into the Magna Carta. That's how serious this issue had become. The Great Charter forced the king to give up forests he'd claimed and ease penalties for hunting violations. Yet brutal punishments continued for centuries. Court records from medieval England reveal people losing hands for taking small game. Others were imprisoned, flogged, or forced to pay ruinous fines. In 1216, a man named William Brewer was fined the enormous sum of 10 marks for taking a deer in the New Forest, equivalent to several years' wages for an average worker. The 14th century poem Robin Hood and the Monk captures the sentiment of the time. Robin loved our dear lady, for doubt of deadly sin would he never do company harm that any woman was in. Yet this same noble outlaw had no qualms about killing the king's deer, because in medieval popular consciousness, the forest laws themselves were unjust. Robin Hood wasn't just folklore, he represented real tensions. Medieval records document numerous cases of organized poaching gangs. In 1248, the Patent Rolls record a band of armed men hunting illegally in Sherwood Forest, the very setting of Robin Hood tales. When forest officials tried to arrest them, violence erupted. These weren't simple criminals, many were respected community members. Some were from struggling gentry families, others were peasants, and some were even village priests. They often had community support and were seen as fighting an unjust system. The 13th century philosopher Thomas Aquinas even weighed in on whether poaching was sinful, arguing that natural law might permit taking food in cases of genuine need. When your family was starving and deer roamed nearby, theoretical ownership rights must have seemed cruelly arbitrary. Women and girls weren't exempt from forest law punishments. Court records show Alice Rolfe was imprisoned in 1274 for snaring rabbits in the king's warren. In 1377, a widow named Emma Barker was fined heavily for allowing her son to shoot a pheasant on noble land. These weren't isolated incidents. Every manor court record from medieval England contains poaching cases. The frequency reveals something important. Despite brutal punishments, people never stopped hunting illegally. The need for protein and the sense that these laws violated ancient rights proved more powerful than fear. Number 3. Lords, knights, and hierarchies, the complex web of hunting privileges. Think medieval hunting was simply kings versus peasants. Think again. The reality was far more complicated. Kings granted hunting rights to loyal nobles as rewards. These privileges came with specific limitations. A baron might be allowed to hunt deer but not boar, or could hunt in certain seasons but not others. Each animal had its own status. Red deer and wild boar topped the prestige list, while rabbits and pheasants ranked lower. The 12th century nobility became obsessed with hunting as a martial exercise. As one French treatise explained, the hunt is practice for war. Knights trained for battle by pursuing deer, while falconry showcased precision and control. These weren't just sports, they were status symbols that separated the elite from common people. Church officials added another layer to this complex system. Bishops and abbots often held hunting rights that conflicted with local lords. The Archbishop of York controlled vast hunting grounds in medieval Yorkshire, leading to decades-long disputes with nearby nobles. One fascinating case from 1301 shows the complexity. Bishop Anthony Beck of Durham was granted royal permission to hunt on his lands. When the powerful Earl of Warenne learned of this, he reportedly burst into a rage, declaring, "If the king wishes to give the bishop hunting rights, by God's teeth, he'll hunt nowhere near my lands." The dispute required royal intervention to resolve. Meanwhile, wealthy merchants in medieval towns sought hunting privileges to boost their social standing. A successful cloth merchant might purchase the right to hunt smaller game, mimicking noble pastimes. This created tension with established nobility, who viewed hunting as their birthright. Medieval women from noble families participated in hunting more actively than once believed. While they rarely joined deer hunts, records show noblewomen enthusiastically participating in falconry. The Countess of Ulster maintained her own hawks and hunting staff in the 1330s, and Queen Isabella of England was renowned for her skill with hunting birds. Jewish communities faced unique challenges regarding hunting. Forbidden from owning land in most medieval kingdoms, they could rarely hunt legally. Yet kosher dietary laws still allowed game meat under certain conditions. This created a strange situation where Jewish communities sometimes purchased poached meat through intermediaries, technically legal to eat but illegally obtained. By the 14th century, hunting rights had become incredibly nuanced. A knight might have the right to hunt fox on Tuesdays but not Fridays, or could take male deer but not females. These distinctions weren't trivial. Violating specific terms could result in hefty fines or loss of privileges entirely. The system grew so complex that specialized legal experts emerged. These verderers and regarders knew the intricate details of forest law and adjudicated disputes. Their court records reveal a world where knowing which birds you could trap with nets versus which required falcons could make the difference between legal hunting and criminal poaching. Number 2. Forests, fields, and boundaries, how hunting rights shaped the medieval landscape. Did you know hunting rights literally changed how medieval Europe looked? The impact went far beyond who could shoot a deer. Royal forests weren't just hunting preserves, they were legal designations that affected everything from farming to building. Within forest boundaries, peasants couldn't clear trees without permission, limiting agricultural expansion. They couldn't build freely or graze livestock in certain areas. Even gathering firewood could require special permission. The landscape itself was modified to support elite hunting. Kings and nobles created deer leaps, gaps in park boundaries that allowed deer to enter but made it difficult for them to leave. They dug artificial ponds for waterfowl and planted specific trees that produced better food for game animals. The new forest created by William the Conqueror reportedly required destroying several villages. While historians debate the extent of this destruction, archaeological evidence confirms some settlements disappeared after forest designation. Imagine your entire village being eliminated just so the king could hunt more conveniently. Over generations, these hunting preserves shaped settlement patterns. Villages clustered around forest edges, creating the distinctive landscape still visible in parts of Europe today. In areas like the German Black Forest or England's Epping Forest, modern towns often trace their origins to medieval settlements positioned strategically at forest boundaries. Monasteries became unexpected players in landscape modification for hunting. When wealthy patrons donated land to religious houses, it often came with hunting rights. The monks of Waverley Abbey in Surrey maintained extensive rabbit warrens that shaped the local topography. These human-made rabbit habitats created the distinctive mounded landscapes still visible in parts of England. By the 13th century, specialized parks for specific game animals had become common. A nobleman might maintain separate enclosures for deer, boar, and pheasants. These parks required extensive infrastructure: walls, gates, keepers' lodges, and feeding stations. The remains of these structures still dot the European countryside. Climate and geography influenced hunting practices and landscapes. In northern Europe, nobles created heathlands by clearing forests, creating ideal habitats for grouse and other game birds. In Mediterranean regions, hunting reserves often featured carefully managed woodland and scrub designed to support wild boar and red-legged partridge. Peasant communities didn't accept these landscape changes passively. Records show numerous instances of deliberate sabotage, breaking park fences, filling in ditches, or destroying hunting lodges. In 1327, during a period of political instability in England, commoners damaged over 60 deer parks in what historians recognize as targeted protests against hunting restrictions. Even city development felt the impact of hunting rights. Many medieval towns were prohibited from expanding in certain directions because they bordered hunting preserves. London's growth was constrained by royal forests, while Paris developed asymmetrically because hunting grounds to the west were protected from urban expansion. The legacy of these landscape changes persists today. Many of Europe's most beloved parks and forests, from Germany's Teutoburg Forest to England's Sherwood Forest, retain boundaries established by medieval hunting rights. When you walk these woods today, you're experiencing a landscape shaped by centuries-old conflicts over who could hunt there. Number 1. Rebellion, resistance, and reform: how hunting conflicts changed medieval society. Could disputes over hunting rights actually change governments? In medieval Europe, they did exactly that. The Magna Carta, that cornerstone of Western legal tradition, devoted 5 clauses specifically to forest law reforms. When barons forced King John to sign this charter in 1215, hunting rights weren't a minor concern, they were central to the rebellion. The document demanded, all forests that have been created in our reign shall at once be disafforested. This wasn't just about hunting, it was about limiting royal power. Peasant rebellions frequently cited hunting restrictions among their grievances. During the Great English Peasants' Revolt of 1381, rebels specifically targeted records related to forest laws, burning court rolls that documented poaching convictions. Their leader, Wat Tyler, reportedly declared that all game, fish, and beasts of the forest should become common to all. In France, the 1358 Jacquerie Rebellion saw peasants attacking noble hunting lodges and killing game in restricted forests. Contemporary accounts described rebels wearing deer antlers to mock noble hunting rituals. The connection between hunting rights and revolutionary sentiment wasn't coincidental, it reflected deep resentment of an unequal system. But change came through evolution as well as revolution. By the late Middle Ages, a system of licenses had developed allowing non-nobles to hunt under specific conditions. Town charters increasingly included limited hunting rights for citizens. The 1217 Charter of the Forest in England significantly relaxed hunting restrictions for common people. As medieval society evolved, hunting conflicts reflected broader social changes. The rising merchant class used wealth to purchase hunting privileges previously reserved for nobles by birth. This commercialization of hunting rights undermined the traditional social order while creating new types of conflicts. Religious reforms also influenced hunting rights. The 12th century monastic reform movement criticized excessive hunting by church officials. Bernard of Clairvaux famously condemned bishops who spent more time with hawks than with parishioners. These critiques gradually changed attitudes about appropriate hunting behavior for clerics. Legal systems adapted too. By the 14th century, courts recognized distinctions between poaching for food and poaching for profit. Records show judges imposing lighter sentences when defendants could prove genuine hunger. This nuanced approach reflected evolving concepts of justice and necessity. Technological changes disrupted traditional hunting hierarchies. The crossbow, which required less training than the longbow, made efficient hunting accessible to non-nobles. This prompted numerous laws restricting crossbow use, not for safety concerns, but to maintain social distinctions in hunting methods. The Black Death of 1348 to 1350 unexpectedly transformed hunting practices. With population drastically reduced, labor became scarce and peasants gained leverage. Many negotiated expanded hunting rights as part of their working conditions. Records show a significant increase in commoners legally hunting small game after the plague years. By the end of the medieval period, hunting rights had evolved from rigid prohibitions to a complex system of privileges that reflected changing power relationships. The tensions between exclusive royal forests and common hunting needs had produced compromises unimaginable in William the Conqueror's time. These medieval conflicts over hunting rights still echo today. Modern debates about land access, resource management, and who controls wildlife have their roots in these ancient disputes. When contemporary protesters demand public access to private woodlands or challenge exclusive hunting leases, they're participating in a conflict that has shaped Western society for 1,000 years. Ever wondered why some people today still feel passionate about their right to hunt? Could it be that these modern attitudes are the distant descendants of medieval struggles over who controlled the deer, the birds, and the forests they lived in?